just part of my memoir, which I'm publicly posting. I'll turn it down. But, I just have things that I be talking about to myself and thinking about. Because I've started to meet, or I have met so many people in Georgia, and I have conversations with some, and I see some posts that they make, about troubling times and stuff like that. And people from home, some people, they say, "You seem so happy, you look so happy." Even down here, people like, "Hey, you be doing this, doing that." And sometimes I stop people, and sometimes I thank people. And in many cases, when I stop people, I stop them and I say, more likely, what you see wouldn't really be happening if I hadn't moved out of the city that I was born and raised in. I probably would be suffering and going through the same mental anguish as you. Moving to Georgia was a big blessing. It allowed me to be able to see things that I couldn't see because I was in the midst. I couldn't see people that was using me. I couldn't see things that I was doing wrong. I couldn't see the correct way of life. I made the transition. I started back in 2015. I started really talking about God and putting Him on my page. But it's like people didn't understand or believe what it is that I was posting. Went into church and was going to Bible studies and things like that. I had stopped drinking. I cold turkey cocaine, and I stopped DJing in bars, and I started doing my own events in a different way versus what I was accustomed to or what people was accustomed to. And when I changed and started throwing those events, mainly at the Erie Manicore Club, the responses from those events were horrible compared to the unprofessional ratchet stuff that I would do, which would sell out. And if I can say, at the Manicore, I had the Valentine's party and I did the comedy show, with Left Eye and Mikey and them, all them kids, and I brought all them up from Pittsburgh. But both of them was a flop. But when I did street stuff, but I mean, the stuff that I promoted with the Victoria Princesses, the vibe was pretty decent. But, basically the mentality would not be what it is today if I had not basically what they say over many records in time, if I had not cut the grass. I had to cut the grass. I had to cut the grass and take a closer look at people. In 2020, Tanya Flowers, she booked me down here. I didn't intend on moving to Georgia. It was just basically like, shit, I got a chance to go to DJ in Atlanta. And actually, she lived in Powder Springs. I got a chance to go to Georgia and DJ for other people. So I looked at that opportunity to get out of Erie and go somewhere else, messed around, and decided to stay a little longer, a couple more days. And that was it. That changed the course of my history. But I do want to say, Erie is my home. That's where I'm born and raised. So don't ever think that there's not a possibility that I'm never coming back home. Because we don't know what the Creator has in store. Do I ever want to move back there? No. No, I don't. But I do know that I can if I want to. But I could never disturb my peace like that intentionally. You know, I could never disturb my peace like that on purpose. I mean, I talk to people. I see what's happening. I see what's going on. I don't know why. You know, I don't know why people are the way they are. All I know is that things changed once the pandemic hit and we came out and life started evolving again. Things just weren't the way that they used to be. People, mind frames, and I blame it on the money and really not the pandemic itself. I blame it on the way people got money and they just, how they treated people. How they treated their boyfriends, how they treated their girlfriends. You know, people just started wilding out, spending money all crazy and just dissing people that they love, or dissing people that love them, because purely they didn't have love for anybody, because you know they got something that most of them really weren't used to having. You got people, you know, you have so many people that bought cars and bought all this. Most of them don't even have a pot to piss in. They don't have the vehicle, they don't have the clothes, they don't have the jewelry, they don't have anything from the pandemic. They don't have none of that. Any of the money, they don't have nothing. You know? And so the people that they treated badly, they continue to progress as the pandemic, you know, dwindled away, and they worked their jobs and continued to pay their bills in their house, you know, and they made their beds and they laid in them, and people say, well, you know, we're done. What I look like taking you back after that? And I think it just created a lot of animosity. And a lot of hate just started unfolding from that. This is a raw memoir. I'll start posting these on my YouTube and just let it ride.